Ever feel like you messed up and just wish you had a do-over? Like maybe a cosmic undo button or something?
Uh-huh. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, right? It's human nature to make mistakes. But what about making things right? Turns out there's this ancient text, Leviticus, specifically chapter 6, that's all about making amends. And the stuff in there, it's surprisingly relevant even today.
Yeah, it really is. It's interesting how Leviticus is often seen as this book of rules, but it also offers this really insightful framework for dealing with ethical dilemmas and repairing broken relationships. It goes beyond just punishment and dives into actually restoring balance and trust.
So walk me through this. What exactly does Leviticus say about making amends?
Okay, so the core concept is the guilt offering, or the trespass offering, as it's sometimes called. And this comes into play when someone has wronged another person in specific ways, like through theft or deceit or even lying under oath. It's about acknowledging these serious breaches of trust.
Okay, got it. So we're not talking about forgetting to take out the trash here. This is like the big leagues of messing up.
Exactly. And the thing is, it's not enough to just say sorry and be done with it. There's a specific process laid out. First, you have to actually confess the wrongdoing. Then you're obligated to return whatever was taken or make restitution for the damage.
Makes sense. So far, so good.
But here's where it gets interesting. You also have to add an additional fifth of the value on top of that.
Well, wait a minute. An extra 20%? That seems
Ah.
pretty intense. Why is that?
Well, it's not just about making things even. This adding a fifth is where it gets really interesting. It signifies a genuine desire to go above and beyond to really repair the harm. You're demonstrating true remorse and a real commitment to restoring the relationship. You're not just checking a box, but putting in the extra effort to actually rebuild trust.
So if I borrow my friend's lawnmower and break it, just replacing it with an identical one isn't enough.
Right. It might technically fulfill the basic obligation, but imagine adding that fifth, maybe by getting them a better model or even throwing in a gift card to their favorite hardware store. It's that extra mile that shows you truly care about making things right.
So it's like saying, I messed up and I'm not just sorry, but I want to show you I value our connection and I'm going to make it up to you.
Exactly. It's about putting in that extra care and consideration.
This fifth idea is making me think about how often we just settle for the bare minimum when we make mistakes. You know, we apologize to maybe do the most basic thing to fix it and call it a day. But this adds a whole other dimension to taking responsibility.
And that's where these ancient principles start to feel really relevant to how we handle things today, even in our modern world.
Yeah, it really connects to a lot of things, doesn't it? One area where this ancient wisdom really shines is in the concept of restorative justice. It's gaining a lot of traction today as a powerful way to deal with wrongdoing.
Restorative justice. I've heard the term before, but can you remind me? How exactly does that work?
Sure. So unlike traditional justice systems that mainly focus on punishing the offender, restorative justice aims to repair the harm done to the victim and the community. It's about understanding the real impact of the offense and taking responsibility for making things whole again. So instead of just focusing on punishment, it's about actually healing the damage and preventing it from happening again.
Exactly. Imagine a situation in a workplace where someone's experienced harassment. Instead of just firing the person who did it, restorative justice might involve a facilitated dialogue between them.
Oh, I see. So they would actually have to talk to the person they harmed
Yeah.
and understand the impact of their actions.
Right. It could even involve mediation with a trained professional.
That seems so much more impactful than just a slap on the wrist.
It is. And it aligns perfectly with those principles we find in Leviticus, the emphasis on acknowledging the wrong, understanding the consequences, and actively working to repair the harm.
Right. It's like adding a fifth concept and applying it on a bigger scale.
It really is. It could involve a sincere apology sensitivity training for the whole team, or even some form of restitution to the victim. You're not just looking at the surface level, but going deeper to address the root causes and create a path for real healing and change.
That's a really powerful way to look at it.
Now, there's another fascinating aspect of this chapter in Leviticus that we haven't touched on yet. It involves the instructions given to the priests regarding the sacrifices.
Oh, yeah. All those really detailed rituals and rules. I have to admit, those always seemed a bit hard to follow.
I know what you mean. They can seem that way at first, but there's actually a deeper meaning behind those instructions. The priests were given very specific guidelines for how to handle the offerings, how to keep the fire burning on the altar, all with careful attention to every detail.
So it wasn't just about going through the motions, but about doing it with a sense of reverence and integrity.
Precisely. And that's where the relevance to us today comes in. Even if we aren't dealing with literal sacrifices, we all have responsibilities that require diligence, care, and a commitment to doing things the right way.
Like what kind of responsibilities?
Well, it could be anything, really. It could be a surgeon performing a delicate operation, or a parent making sure their child feels loved and supported.
So it's about bringing that same level of integrity and dedication to whatever you do.
That's exactly it. It makes you think, doesn't it? Even the smallest actions, when done with that level of care, contribute to something bigger. It builds trust, sets an example, and ultimately shapes the kind of person you are.
And it's not just about getting things done, but how you approach those tasks and the intention you bring to them.
Now, weaving all of this together, there's one more crucial takeaway from Leviticus chapter 6 that I want to highlight, and that's the idea of seeking reconciliation as a path to personal growth.
Okay, tell me more about that. I'm really interested.
So it's about recognizing that this process of making amends, the confession, the restitution, the going the extra mile, it's not just about appeasing the person you wronged, it's about something deeper. It's about transforming yourself.
So it's like taking ownership of your actions and actually using it as an opportunity to become a better person.
Exactly. You're confronting your mistakes and actually learning from them. That's where the real growth happens. Leviticus reminds us that even when we mess up, there's a chance for redemption, for healing, for becoming the best versions of ourselves.
It's amazing how this ancient text connects personal growth with making amends. It's not just about fixing the situation, but about an internal shift as well.
It really is. And that brings us to the heart of what Leviticus chapter 6 is all about. It's not just about rules and rituals, but about understanding how deeply our actions impact others and then taking responsibility for creating a more just and compassionate world. It's like a guide for rebuilding trust and restoring harmony, both within ourselves and in our relationships.
That's such a powerful message. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Leviticus, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think it comes down to this. How can you add a fifth today? In your relationships, your work, your interactions, how can you go beyond just the bare minimum and make a real difference? How can you leave things better than you found them?
That's a great question to think about. It's a challenge to step outside our comfort zones and really embrace that spirit of generosity, integrity, and care in everything we do.
It really is. It's about choosing to make a positive impact, not because we have to, but because it's the right thing to do.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating look at how ancient wisdom can still offer guidance for us today.
It has been. Thanks for having me, Podra.